Could Julio Rodriguez win the AL MVP in 2025? Let's talk about it. So for absolutely no reason at all, I was on X the other day and I reposted this basically podcast clip from this one podcast that was discussing, is Julio Rodriguez the best center fielder in all of baseball? And even though that he hasn't lived up to the hype that we all hoped he would for after his rookie year and after winning Rookie of the Year, he is still arguably one of the best center fielders in baseball in terms of all-around talent. He is a five-tool player, and there really isn't that many center fielders in today's game that are five-tool players. But it had me thinking, what are the odds that Julio Rodriguez really could win an AL MVP in 2025, or honestly even in the future in general? Because I still don't understand all the unwarranted hate that Julio receives, where people say like he's mediocre or he's just some regular guy on a regular team. He is the face of the Seattle Mariners franchise, whether people like that or not. And he's only 24 years old. Let's not forget that part. So basically in today's video, I just kind of want to go over some things that Julio really needs to improve on in 2025 in order for him to really even have a chance to even be in the top 5 for AL MVP voting. But I just kind of want to sit here and kind of debunk all the negativity saying that Julio is this, Julio's mediocre, blah, 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 blah. So let's get into it. So I guess let's start with who the AL MVP in 2024 was, and that was Aaron Judge, where Aaron Judge hit 322 with 58 home runs, 144 RBIs, an 18.9% walk rate, a 218 WRC plus, and an 11.2 WAR. Now, I will be a little bit realistic here. I do not think Julio can put up those numbers from an offensive standpoint, but again, I do think Julio offers things that Aaron Judge does not, such as speed as well as really good defense. So yeah, in order for Julio to really have a chance at winning AL MVP, he really needs to take his game to the next level, because a lot of people out there do believe that he can sit at a 7 to 8 WAR on a year-to-year basis, which is 100% possible with a guy of his skill set. He just really needs to figure certain things out. Now, there's one thing that I also wanted to discuss when it came to the MVP, because last year there was a discussion on whether Shohei Ohtani or Francisco Lindor should win the MVP for the NL. And, there's a side basically saying who is the best player, which should be the MVP, or who really has the biggest impact on their team should be the MVP. Now, I don't believe Julio could win the case of if he's the best player in the AL that season, because I do think, you have guys like Judge who are putting out almost 60 home runs a year and almost 150 RBIs, which is absolutely insane. But I do think Julio can 100% win an MVP at some point throughout his career. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be 2025. But in terms of, if you think about it from the NL MVP voting, where people think Francisco Lindor was the biggest impact player on any team, so he basically had the biggest impact on the New York Mets, and he basically led them to where they were last year. I think Julio could 100% be that player for the Seattle Mariners. I mean, in order for us to really make a deep run, Julio needs to carry this team. This team is pretty good, I think, from an overall, they're a pretty good, solid team from start to finish. But at the end of the day, Julio really needs to lead this team and not be inconsistent like he has been throughout his career. So let's talk a little bit about Julio's down year last year, which was still a pretty solid year, but he definitely had a down year from his previous seasons. He hit 273 last year with only 20 home runs, which these are all career lows for him. 273 average is a career low. 20 home runs is a career low. 68 RBIs is a career low. 24 stolen bases is a career low. And a 116 WRC plus is a career low, as well as his 3.8 F4 was a career low. So yeah, not necessarily something you want to see from our franchise player who has the biggest contract on the entire squad having a down year. But again, he was 23 last year. He had that little bit of an injury. He really just couldn't find his groove until Edgar came in, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's just the same thing. We'll go over this very consistent scheme, as you'll see throughout this video. But let's move on to some head-to-heads. And I know some of you aren't the biggest fans of head-to-head, but I'm going to be comparing him to two different players in terms of their first 3 seasons in Major League Baseball. So let's start off with one of the obvious Seattle Mariners legends and overall baseball legends, Ken Griffey Jr. Now, Ken Griffey obviously was 19 in his rookie season, while Julio was 21. But either way, as you can tell by the screenshot on your screen, that in their first 3 seasons, Julio had a better WAR, more plate appearances, more hits, more home runs, more RBIs, and more stolen bases. Now, Griffey does lead in terms of batting average, on base percentage, slugging, OPS, and OPS plus. But nonetheless, Julio, comparing to one of the greatest baseball players of all time after their first 3 seasons, he is right there with him. They each had 2 All-Star appearances in their first 3 seasons, as well as Julio has 1 more Silver Slugger than Ken Griffey did after their first 3 seasons. So let's stop acting like Julio is just some mediocre player who really just, he's just not good. A lot of people are just literally sitting there commenting saying he's mediocre, he's not good, he's way overrated, which is just not true. Look at the numbers. And I'm going to compare him to one other guy, which I know some of you can be like, why are you comparing? Because it makes Julio kind of look bad. It really doesn't when you break it down to the nitty gritty. So let's compare him to a player where if you asked any Major League Baseball fan would not say is a bad player or overrated, and that is Bobby Witt Jr. Now, Julio and Bobby Witt did come into the league in the same year, so this is their first 3 seasons, both of their first 3 full MLB seasons together. Julio, the only thing Julio leads in is WAR. So he has a 1.2 higher WAR than Bobby Witt over the course of those 3 seasons. Now, Bobby Witt does beat him in basically every single other category: games, plate appearances, hits. I'm not going to go down the whole list because you can see, obviously, he beats him in a lot of categories. But Julio is not far off. Games played, Bobby Witt has played 39 more games. Bobby Witt has, a little over 50, I think it's 58 hits more than him. Only 2 more home runs than Julio. Only 11 points higher on his batting average. Only 2 points higher on his on-base percentage, and only 1 higher on his OPS plus. So again, if you ask most people would probably say Bobby Witt is the best shortstop in all of baseball, if not, one of the top 5 players in all of baseball. And Julio, after the first 3 seasons, are neck and neck, and that is with Julio having a down year last year. So again, I really don't see where the overrated or he's mediocre is coming from. Him and Bobby Witt are some of the top young talent in this entire game. A guy like Corbin Carroll even had a down year last year in his second year after coming off a major rookie season. It's baseball. They're inconsistent. They're young players. They're going to eventually come into their own and find that consistency. Someone like Bobby Witt doesn't need to find it because he's had it throughout his entire career, but some guys like Julio clearly do need to find consistency. And now this is honestly one of the most important segments of this video, breaking down where Julio seems to struggle throughout his career and where the inconsistency comes from. So we're going to be going over 3 major things, and that is first and second half stats. And mind you, all these stats you're about to hear are throughout his entire career, not just one season. It's basically how he performs in the first half of the year throughout his career, how he performs in the second half throughout his career, how he performs in individual months, as well as how he performs when the Mariners win versus how the Mariners lose. So starting off with your first and second half stats. So in the first half of his seasons, Julio has a 264 batting average, which is pretty good. Obviously, a 264 is not bad at all. But then you go to his second half where he has a 300 batting average. And then on the flip side of that, which is kind of interesting, is in the first half, he has 61 stolen bases over the course of those 3 seasons in the first half. And in the second half, he only has 25. So clearly, Julio goes through a massive divide. In the first half, he's focusing on stealing bags, getting on base more often, maybe not hitting necessarily so much for power, or hitting for more power than instead of just focusing on hitting for a high batting average. While in the second half, you can kind of see he kind of takes it back, focuses more on his plate approach and kind of just getting on base in the first place by getting singles, whatever the case may be, instead of focusing so much on his power and his stolen bases. So that is the first interesting part about how Julio operates as a player. Now here we're going to go down the line in terms of by month batting average throughout his career. So in the months of March and April, Julio has a career batting average of 238, while in May, Julio has a career batting average of 278, while in June, Julio has a career batting average of 236. In July, he has a career batting average of 301. In August, he has a career batting average of 320. And in September/October, he has a career batting average of 304. So as you can tell, once June hits, Julio turns into an absolutely different player. From July, August, and September, Julio is just honestly one of the best hitters in baseball. And that is very true. Even last year, we saw it last year once Edgar came in August. Julio absolutely went off in the last half of the year. He had a 313 batting average with 9 home runs, 30 RBIs, a 159 WRC plus, and a 1.8 FWAR. So from July on, Julio is literally one of the best players in baseball. But when it comes from March to June, he really seems to struggle, except honestly in the month of May, where he does do pretty good with a career 278. But as you can see, just the March and April and June are just the main reasons for his inconsistencies. Now let's go into, remember when I said the face of the franchise, this is how Julio will literally carry this team to the promised land if he just can stay consistent all season long. In wins, Julio has a 318 batting average and a 554 slug. While in games where the Seattle Mariners lose, Julio has a 226 batting average with a 282 on-base percentage and a 358 slugging. So his slugging goes from a 554 in wins all the way down to a 358 in losses. As well as his home run count goes from 57 in wins and only 23 in losses, 183 RBIs in wins and 63 RBIs in losses. So there is just a massive drop-off when the Seattle Mariners win a game versus when they lose. Because again, Julio is the face of this franchise and he will carry this team to the promised land if he just can stay consistent. So I really just wanted to make this video kind of just discuss, does Julio really have a shot to win the AL MVP this year? And honestly, the answer might probably be no. Do I think he can 100% win it at some point in his career? Yes, but in my mind, he really just needs to put together a full legit season where he's consistent throughout the entire year. I'm not asking him to hit 350 all year. He's going to have months where he's hotter and he's going to have months where he's colder. But those cold months really cannot be in the 225 batting average range. Those cold months really need to be anywhere from 265 to 285, hopefully. And then every other month where he's hot is above 300 because he has the capability to do so. But truthfully, I also just wanted to make this video because I'm really tired of all the people hating on Julio Rodriguez, saying he is just a mediocre player. He is a well above average player. And for the age, again, he's 24 years old. He's done things that people could only imagine doing, especially at the major league level. And he compares to some of the best players in baseball. Nobody will ever say Bobby Witt Jr. is a mediocre player, and he's right there with him. So otherwise, I would love your guys' thoughts on what you guys think about where Julio could potentially finish. I did some hot take videos, and some of you guys did said he could finish in the top 5 for AL MVP voting this year, which I definitely think is possible. I don't think he's going to win it this year, but it would be nice to see his name in the top 8, top 5 in the voting this year. But otherwise, I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.